Zoom. Um, oh, my video went off? Okay. I guess we're live now, bro. Let me,
Now, do we have people in the audience?
yeah, I will have to open a window for that now. So let me do that. Like go to the, thanks for your patience, you guys. We had just had a live, but we weren't seeing the other person, Brian here. And so I'm going to the live now. Yeah, it's working on this live now. So we got people coming in.
Yay.
And SM Holder says it's all good. Good video, good sound, right, you guys? Okay. So yeah, this is a, let me reboot this. So I'm your brother Anuhazi, and welcome to Christos Avatar TV. Tonight we're interviewing our brother Brian. Say hello, Brian.
Hello, everybody. I hope I'm loud and clear this time.
Yeah, and getting confirmation. So yeah, so this is tonight we're talking about the secret spacecraft program, SSP, sometimes it's called, or just disclosure of that, and also something called the Khazarian Mafia. And so this is Brian's second time, but we just want to go into some different topics and directions. And so if you could just introduce yourself again real quick, and then just start right into what where we left off.
Yeah, so my name is Brian Tseng, the Solar Bee, and I'm a full disclosure movement organizer, advocate, all on a volunteer basis. And I know many people in our community who have recall of being in various super soldier programs and secret space programs. And this includes the Montauk projects, and that's with a uh, plural. There's multiple projects that happened at Camp Hero Air Force Base at Long Island, New York. And we're before we had our technical issues, Christos was asking about the children who have abilities to open up portals, and then why that would be valuable to people running secret space programs, for example. And the reason why is because with portals, you can open up portals not just in space, but also in time. And one of the main things that they were abusing the Montauk projects for was to alter our timeline to put us on a negative timeline, one where the New World Order um, Illuminati types win. And then that's, bringing us more to this conversation for tonight is, who's who in the zoo, not just here at the 3D level and 4D on the surface of Earth, but then getting to the secret space programs, the breakaway civilizations, and ETs, and the even demonic and archon level energies.
Yeah, man. And I just wanted to recap just real quick. This started way back in Germany. I mean, they were actually contacted around World War II by ETs, right? So they had this kind of like benefit. It wasn't like a friendly thing, but they were cooperating. And so
Well,
they were able to get enough tech, right?
in the lead up to the beginning of World War II, because you had Maria Orsic and the Vril Damen, the
Yeah.
Vril woman, the Vril Society, and in the 1930s, they were getting telepathic transmissions from ETs, claiming they were from Aldebaran, and
Mhm.
you know, far outside our solar system, and they're getting schematics for things like UFOs and Hitler's Bell, Die Glocken. And apparently it's really rudimentary because a lot of the German scientists and pilots were actually suffering and dying from various radiation type effects in trying to dial in this technology. And it wasn't developed sufficiently by the Germans and their Third Reich by the official end of World War II, 1945, with the Japanese surrender, um, Victory Day, Victory Japan Day. Um, and they did, though, have enough of the technology to first flee to um, South America and then to Antarctica, New Schwabenland,
Yeah.
and they had a German base down there. And then from there, they apparently went to the moon and Mars and beyond. And not only was it the Germans, but just like in World War II, their closest allies were the Japanese. Um, Up in space, both the German and Japanese civilizations have a lot of, um, I guess, intermingling, or at least some. Um, but they each have their own breakaway civilizations. The Japanese being, and this is according to Riley Nuskin and John Whitberg and others, the Empire of 1,000 Suns, right? Kind of a play on here,
Yeah.
Japan Empire of the Rising Sun,
It takes on
where
a
now it's
different
a thousand
meaning.
suns. Yeah. And then the German Federation of Federated Free Worlds, or some German Federation of Free Worlds, something like that. They're bundled, and I don't know the names in German or Japanese, but they
Yeah.
obviously have them.
So this would have started the going to the moon first, right? And for most people, it's on the back side of the moon. You never see one side of the moon. So a lot of these operations are on the back side, but they can use holographic illusions anyways to cover things up. But also then they would branch off from there and develop the technology. Uh, this is why you consider it a breakaway because now they have totally different technologies than the mainstream scientists or space programs. So they're able to do, but also at the end of World War II, their German scientists were going to different nations. Some of them came to America. So we got some of that insight, some of that technology, right?
Well, the reality is that Germany won World War II. And that's why you had the flyovers of UFOs over Washington, D.C. in the 50s, and they're in Luftwaffe formation, the craft. And apparently they stormed Congress, rounded up everybody, and had them sign and basically a surrender agreement to them. And that's why with Operation Paperclip, we had so many of these World War II Germans infiltrating our society and government and military at all levels, and to this day. And
So
and
that
and you
because
see
they
that
were
quickly.
in control of
And
the,
they've exactly they've been in control this whole time. And then that brings us to their New World Order depopulation agenda here on the surface of the planet, and then how they're destabilizing countries and societies everywhere they can with the George Soros color revolutions, so called. Um, and that those types of things, and Antifa and BLM, and getting people stirred up and trying to run over ICE agents in Minneapolis, where they've also uncovered billions of dollars of fraud under the governor and certain local populations there. And meanwhile, off planet, they tell their personnel in things like Nachtwaffen or Darkfleet that the Earth is uninhabitable. We've all been blown up by cobalt bombs in like a
Mhm.
World War III scenario. And then that's to basically discourage people from wanting to run away from whatever breakaway
Yeah.
group or ship they're on to try to make it back to the surface of Earth.
It's a form of compartmentalization, so they don't know the whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're based on slavery, and not
Yeah.
just human over human slavery, but ET over human slavery. And then this brings us back to things like the Greada Treaty of 1952, where under the Eisenhower administration, a lot of it was done behind his back. Um, Majestic 12 and the US, deep state, they signed an agreement with the Greys, who are really proxies for the negative Draconians, instead of with a Valiant Thor Galactic Federation Star Trek faction to give us peaceful technologies. The
And
deep state went for military type technologies.
that is actually wild because the Guardian teachings talk about the Greys and the Dracos in alignment, and that the Dracos are kind of bossing around the aliens. So I want to ask you, I'm sure they didn't stop with America. I mean, are they controlling some of the other nations?
Yeah, and it's not just the Greys and the Draco, it's the Anunnaki as well.
Oh, of
And
course,
then
yeah.
this brings us into that the Khazarian Mafia type bloodlines, the Anunnaki bloodlines, where they're carrying on these very evil cult-like rituals and energy harvesting, loosh harvesting, going back thousands of years to Atlantis, and then down through Babylon, Sumeria, and the Canaanites, and down to the Egyptians, and through the Romans, through the Dark Ages and Renaissance to modern day.
It makes you wonder, okay, why are all these people throughout history worshiping gods? I mean, where are these gods really being sourced from? Who are they really, right?
Right. Well, these are beings, they're basically bullies
Mhm.
that instead of elevating themselves, they've stayed behind at the grade school on the playground to bully the littler, younger kids, children, and to harvest in so many ways. And um, it's been incredibly probably lucrative for them in terms of harvesting energy and food and genetics and slaves and on and on and on.
So, is there any room of freedom, you would say, or is this like ET martial law, or what would you call it?
So it's basically, so many people say Earth is a prison planet. And I say it's for so many, it's a prison planet, but it doesn't have to be. And then now that prison status is can be coming to an end. And it's up to us to tear down the prison like the Bastille and to say
Mm.
no more. And that really begins with understanding all the distortions and illusions and to uncover the hidden information, the truth, so that we can, as a society, as a species, um, come to a collective reckoning rather than this piecemeal schizophrenic, we're all at odds. Because at the end of the day, we can't join a galactic society until Earth itself has what's at least defined as a level one civilization on I'm not sure if it's a Kardashev scale or what scale, but the Star Trek scale, however you want to call it, where everybody is fed, housed, clothed, educated, employed if we want to be, and we have a unified world government. Not a new world order government, mind you. It doesn't have to be new world order. People hear one world
Free
government.
world order, free world
Yeah,
order.
exactly. Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
it'd be like an uncorrupted human United Nations,
Mhm. Yeah.
truly representing humanity. And it would probably be based off of councils at the local and then regional, at the national, and then, international, global levels. And
Well,
then
from
whoever the
the
top leadership would be off of that.
within this context, who would you say the cabal is or the deep state? I mean, in regards to the ETs and Nazis, I don't mean to say that word, Germans.
Yeah.
Um,
They're the bloodlines families. I'm told there's really one bloodline, even though Fritz Springmeier was told that there's 13. And then people say, well, there's the 13 bloodlines that people all know about. And then there's the 13 that are more like the Italian bloodlines who are less well known about. And then people were saying then on top of that, you got 13 bloodline families of the breakaway civilizations as well.
okay, I
And
don't want to
they
go there yet, but I want to ask you, since we got all these ideas about the Illuminati and about the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, maybe this will tie into the Khazarian. Maybe you can go there.
Yeah, well, So these bloodlines go back to probably Canaanite times where they were worshiping um
Can you give
demons.
around a year?
This is like um Old Testament times before Egypt, even, which was 2000 years before Christ, would be 0 AD. So it'd be 2000 BC. And then before that, maybe say 1,000 years or so, there would be the Canaanites around then. And then before them, going back to like the pre-flood area times would be like 10 to 12,000 years ago, would be Atlantis. And that'd be around, at least the Anunnaki have been around here on the surface of the planet at least that long, if not longer, to nerf humanity genetically and enslave us to mine gold for them, among other things.
Hmm.
And then they probably taught us bad things and certain technology, but also religious teachings
Yeah.
to incorporate things like human sacrifice.
Hmm.
And then they would have maybe done genetic tinkering on, say, certain bloodlines, right, who would have more Rh negative or ET blood and thus have perhaps more psionic abilities. And then those bloodlines have been interbreeding all the way down through the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and Orsini's and all these other bloodline families who are in general Rh negative, probably. And then they're tracking each other, the ancestry and the lineage all the way down to today.
Yeah, I noticed they take your baby's blood at the when you're in the hospital born, so they could easily be databasing that and finding out what lineage, bloodline you're coming from, right? So
Right. The heel prick. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, so there's got to be some balance of guardians or some type of I mean, if we're talking about going into a civilization without the deep state or there must be some type of balance. I mean, they couldn't completely 100% take over, right? Because of this.
Well, they could, and that's where free will comes in. And then that's where I like to think a lot of the star seeds and ground crew and, awakened humanity comes into play is in certain timelines, perhaps the baddies, they win. And then in other timelines, we have Christed timelines
Hmm.
where, they're higher vibrating and the bad people don't win, even though, you're going to have a mix of everything in between, you know, how good or bad the outcomes are going to be, how painful, or less painful, um, the liberation of humanity and achieving our Star Trek future will be. And that
Yes.
depends on us.
But these people in power wouldn't want us to have free will. They wouldn't want us to be awakening. So how do you explain that?
Well, they're not all powerful and they've been doing everything they can this whole time to keep us down. And yet here we are, you and I
Right,
having
right.
this conversation and with our lovely audience getting to listen and perhaps participate, throw questions in the comments and we
They
could come
will.
back for some of
Yeah.
them later too.
Yeah, you guys, please write comments and we'll have Giannis send me those comments. And we're going to be going for about an hour and a half.
Mhm.
Um, and so, since that was one of our topics, brother, Khazarian, could you, like, because you mentioned a few things that tripped me out, like the Rockefellers aren't, or the Rothschilds aren't what we think they are, right?
The Rothschilds and Rockefellers might share bloodline heritage, and then the Khazars were basically kind of like a Canaanite Turkic region. These areas where they lived over thousands of years from then to now, going from the Middle East up into the Ukraine. And there's a period of time when, as a grouping of people, they would raid down onto the Silk Road and like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. But not only would they, take over people in the caravan and take all the gold and spices and silks, but they would also torture the people in the caravan and find out who they were, where they were from, what they were carrying, where they were going, what they were going to do once they got there, who they were going to meet. And then these people would impersonate that caravan and they would continue along the way. And then they would infiltrate the great houses of Europe through
Wow.
this methodology, meanwhile, worshiping demons and sacrificing children. And so in the Bible, going back to the days of Aaron, and they talk about people worshiping the golden calf and Molech and Baal. And then
Yeah.
down to today, Anya Wick, niece of Jeffrey Epstein, daughter of Mark Epstein, aka Puggy. That's one of Jeffrey Epstein's brothers.
Mhm.
She testifies they themselves call themselves a cult of Baal. And then that's the people that we commonly know as the Illuminati.
And
And so among other demonic beings, they worship Baal, and then many also worship Baphomet.
well, I just want to say quickly that in my Christos avatar, I talk about the hybrids, and what you have is, I mean, even a long time ago, they would have mixed humans with their DNA, and then the soul essence is not human, though. The soul essence goes into these hybrid bodies, and this is why they're what we call fallen angelics, Luciferian consciousness, beings who are anti-God, anti-human, anti-earth. And so, now, how you're describing they're worshiping these and doing sacrifice and blood stuff, that's a sign, that's a calling sign that these are hybrid uh, fallen angelic beings, right? You would say?
Yeah, because they're doing the rituals to do things like harvest the loosh, the negative energy. They're trying to distort our timeline by opening up negative portals and bringing in negative beings. The participants in these acts, these horrible, heinous, Luciferian acts, are
Mhm.
probably opening themselves up to these types of demonic beings.
Yeah.
And it's all about, again, being the puppets and serving demonic beings and throwing humanity under the bus and selling us out.
Yeah. So these Turks were going in to the Silk Road, just developed this power. I guess like you said, they infiltrated. They started infiltrating and developed their power, right?
Yeah. Imagine infiltrating the great houses of Europe and taking over the Vatican. And then you get all these blue bloods, and you get the Rothschilds bragging about inbreeding. And you can people
Incest
do
is
on there do
best.
yeah, well, he basically he made a joke about it, about
Yeah.
keeping it in the family, ha ha
Right.
ha. And also the games that Queen Victoria played to inbreed and intermarry all the royal houses. And you know, even in the Epstein files, they're talking about the Goyim and how Freemasonry is Kabbalah for the Goyim. And then a lot of that is that's occult. Not all of it is dark and evil, but you have groups that have taken these powerful occult practices and then they've gone to the dark side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. The Guardians call the Kabbalah an inverted system, like um kind of like it's originally 12 spheres, Zephyr, but they brought it down to 10 spheres. And also, the cube thing is pretty dark. This whole cube technology connected to
With the
Saturn.
Saturnian, yeah, the Saturnian cube
Yeah.
technology, it's to apparently lock us into some kind of time uh model where we're, instead of ruled by natural time, we're ruled by more of a synthetic archonic time
Well,
model.
isn't it interesting that it's related to Chronos, which is time, one of those fallen angelic gods. So, um,
Yeah, these are aspects of reality that are probably being distorted
mhm.
to keep us in a lower vibrating field.
It's a technology. They understand how it works. They're implementing it on us, imprinting this dark, I don't want to cuss, but this dark stuff on us. And now people, and what is crazy, man, brother? is that people are worshiping these gods, religions, and they're aligning with it. And this is, oh my gosh, it breaks our heart, but this is what's happening with the human race.
Well, it's spiritual warfare,
Yeah.
and you're going to get each and every individual, we get to make our own choices. And then those choices and decisions that we make and how we live our lives, we sort ourselves out. And are we lovers of truth, or would we rather bury our heads in the sand? You know, do we want the red pill or the blue pill? And do we want to act accordingly? And um, I'm not I used to cry about it a lot more, how many people are being deceived. And then now I realize, that everyone, we have our own soul path, and it's okay for people. Maybe they signed up for the deceived life plan, and they get to learn from this incarnation, just like we all get to learn from our incarnations, and it's okay.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're all God source, right? So
Exactly. We're just one life of many, 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 many. And so I don't cry about it too much anymore, but I try to live, the best life I can, and go from there.
yeah, it's not like religion says you're damned. You're not damned. Like our brother said, and like the teachings say, you have the divine gift of free will, holy ones. So, like he asked, what are you doing with that free will? What are you serving with that free will, right? So, uh, and do you really want to live in this dark state of horror, pain, fear, suffering? Does that sound fun? Or how about the ascension path? How about the expansion path? I don't know about you guys. I choose that path. So,
And part of it is in this world, they don't make it so clear cut that there's even an ascension path to be had.
yeah.
The other side, they're always denying the existence of the soul every chance that they can get. And then instead of dangling, hey, you can get closer to God and, the law of one path, they're always dangling the soulless service to self path. Get rich, be an influencer, be a baller, whatever. It's all about
And
you, the individual, and the material versus going deeper inside and, manifesting the kingdom of Christ all around us.
and you see it. You see it playing out. We can see it in New Age. We can see it in religion. We can see how, this false light. That's what I call it, false light systems, inverted systems. And so which is trying to guide you away, what we call the inner Christos, instead of going within, your connection to the source, God. Now you're out here looking at self-proclaimed archangels and gods. And so now we got a cult into it, you got new age into it, and it's like insane, right? So
It's a lot of lost people, and there's a lot of confusion.
Mhm.
And then I think this next
Intentionally.
generation, it's intentional. Oh, it's absolutely intentional. And then hopefully this next generation of young people, they're starting to wake up, because they're seeing how lost the current generation of young people are right now.
Yeah. Was the talking point of the Khazarian finished, or was there more to that?
Well,
Or
what it is that this grouping of people, they're the ones who are pushing the cannibalism and the PDF files and all of that. That's not coming from nowhere.
right.
So, I'm trying to explain that there's even like an ET and demonic origins for this belief system of these people and why they're doing what they're doing. And when we understand that they're the main kind of adversary versus this left right, libertarians versus conservatives or whatever the polarity is. It's I mean, it's even beyond class warfare. I mean, it's not capitalism, socialism, communism all fighting each other. It's humans versus um demonic ETs and outright demons and archons, and the human puppets who are doing their bidding and who are unfortunately in the halls of power so far.
Yeah. So, um, I wanted to ask you about kind of like this power on Earth developing black black money, what do you call it? Black budgets and getting all this, trillions of dollars disappearing. This money is going towards something. And it's a secret. They don't know what's happening it's unaccountable for. But this is where it goes into something out in outer space. They're developing. Our solar
Yeah.
system is developed and it's not new, right?
Right. So you had Catherine Austin Fitts and others talk about the 21 or 22 trillion dollars being allocated to build underground cities. And so these deep underground military bases are very much part of the secret space programs. And then, all the time post World War II leading up to now, you also had something known as, like, I think it was called Plan B or Alternative Three in science fiction, supposedly, where you had the brain drain, and a lot of really intelligent people over the decades following World War II were disappearing. And then many of us suspect they were being drafted into the secret space programs and being taken off world to the moon, the Mars, and beyond.
Dude, there's TV shows and movies that have this scenario. I'm watching one right now. They find the like you said, the scientists, the people who are really brilliant and bright. They want to. Those are assets, right? They want them working for their secret programs, right? So.
Well, part of it is with the Germans winning World War II. Part of the surrender of the US, at least perhaps other countries, was that we had to surrender, give up, just like with the Greada Treaty, a certain amount of people,
Mhm.
personnel to them a year. And then this is for them to then turn into super soldiers or slaves and put into their programs.
So they have permission to abduct, kidnap and it's not as if those are pleasant programs. They involve torture, horror, in order to shatter the mind in a certain way to develop these powers and abilities that they need. But it's insane what they have to deal with, right?
Yeah, it's all based on mind control because it's all based on slavery
Hmm.
and compartmentalization. And in order for them to create split personalities or alters in people, they utilize MK Ultra or mind control practices that are very nasty because they're all trauma based. And that's how they can get people to wipe their memories and also turn people into assassins or sex slaves or combinations of the two, for example.
And there's probably a reason why they do this with celebrities a lot too. I mean, they are able to may even make cloning of them, or I mean, this is to a lot of people, this stuff sounds as insane in science fiction, but that's the whole point of disclosure. The whole point of why people like me and Brian are coming together, and many others, by the way. Um, I mean, reality is science fiction, right? So.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of disclosure in so-called science fiction, and that's intentional. Part of it's a revelation of the method. The negatives, they believe from an occult standpoint that their negative karma, it gets negated if they're telling us suckers their plans, even if it's in a comical or science fiction type format. Um,
Oh, video games too, and
right.
movies. It's kind of like soft disclosure.
Right. And then there are groups like in the military, and these secret societies who do want to see the truth come out.
Yeah,
And then they'll probably put that into science fiction,
right.
soft disclosure. So it's probably a mix of both.
Yeah, and so, um, so do you think that there is some type of ETs or guardians or anyone who's on our side or want? I mean, isn't that part of disclosure? There must be groups, even human groups that are in the military, in the governments who are trying to fight the cabal or whatever you want to call it. They're trying to bring out the truth. That's why disclosure is kind of up and down a little bit, right? Confusing
Well,
sometimes.
the vast majority of the disclosure is coming from us star seeds on the ground,
Mhm.
not starseeds walking, roaming the halls of power, right? And so you've got the Galactic Federation types who were through telepathic transmission giving information to a group in Berkeley in the 1950s that Gene Roddenberry was a part of. And then that's
Hmm.
where they had the information for the Prime Directive, among other things,
Yeah.
transmitted to them. And the concept of like a United Nations of
Yeah.
positive ETs getting together because in the face of negative warring ETs, like the Klingons would be the Alpha Draconians, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Reptilian race. Yeah.
right, so they're trying to, not necessarily interfere directly, but by giving us information, they can help us to make up our minds by having clear information, but without them necessarily stepping in to save us.
It's kind of like
And
seeding. Seeding.
exactly. They're seeding information and then seeing it take hold and then letting us develop
Right.
and overcome the hurdles and obstacles that we're meant to overcome versus them picking us up by the collar
Yeah.
and sticking us on the other side of the wall that we were meant to overcome ourselves.
Giving us some semblance of free will to do that for ourselves, or giving us at least inspiration. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm into science fiction. I wonder why, right? A lot of us indigos or starseeds or people awakening, think about this, you guys, what you're hearing tonight. Um, it's in movies and it's being shown the Star Trek, the Star Wars. It's about conflict and warring with aliens. It's technology and so this is like should probably spark some type of goosebumps in people. You should sense this, right? You would
But
think.
I wouldn't be surprised if anyone watching us right now are huge fans of Star Trek, Star
Right?
Wars,
Yes.
Dune, anime, all of that,
I love Dune.
X-Files. Yeah, oh, Dune's a huge fan.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And then, per Dolores canon, with Earth being a prison planet and being so skewed into the darkness,
Mhm.
apparently Creator Source put out a call to the universe to say, hey, who wants to go and help brighten the situation and incarnate on Earth? And that's how you change things on this planet is by being here and being part of the change that we want to see happen.
Yeah, and that's what people like us and people going to these conventions, kind of like the ones that you're hosting. And these are people who are speaking about these things. I mean, this isn't new, you guys. This is people, there's books, there's channels, I mean, YouTube channels or whatever. People are coming together in conferences and talking about this. And this is part of the beginning of this change that we want, what we see. And so, you see me coming from these teachings, but also this is an important aspect of what's going on in your spiritual journey. And that's why we're having these dialogues. So,
You know? Any
um,
any questions from our audience?
let me double check. Looks like we do. Thank you, Julia. Can you explain? Let me make sure. Yeah, can you explain crystal children and rainbow children? What's their purpose here compared to the indigos?
Um, so I'm not sure the exact distinction between crystal children and indigo children, except maybe they represent different waves of volunteers coming in. Like with Dolores Cannon, she talked about the first wave, second wave, and third wave. It might be the first wave where like the crystal children, and then the second wave, or maybe now it might be more the indigos. And I think these are different aspects of star seeds coming in to help make change happen. So like the first wave, they're like our grandparents and parents, and they were like during the 60s and 70s, and they were like the original hippie dippies and people going to India, for example, to learn yoga or to Asia to learn martial arts and then to bring it back to, the US, the West, for example.
Mhm.
And um they were the real first pioneers of all of this, spiritual exploration and practice in the West. And they were looked upon as freaks,
Yeah.
by and large. Um,
Still do.
the, exactly. The pioneers get the arrows in the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And then the second wave would be more like you and I, Chris, I think, like I put Penny Bradley, for example, in
Oh
the
yeah.
first wave, and we'd be more the second wave. Now it's not quite as strange for people like us to pursue these different categories and subjects of interest. um, it's a lot easier, but we're still blazing a path. And then we're fighting our own battles as we get attacked and targeted by the other side and the trolls and skeptics. And then hopefully things will be a bit easier for the next wave, the youth, but they're going to be coming into an even more chaotic situation than our parents and grandparents and we've had to contend with.
Yeah.
And my heart really goes out to them.
Yeah.
But
And
then they'll probably be more gifted psychically as well, and on and on.
mhm. And this is what you call a positive hybrid, because we have plenty of negative hybrids, and but some of the soul essences, like Brian is describing, are these, sent by source, you can say, sent by the councils, the guardians, and so that's your mission. Our mission is to help awaken humanity, just like we were explaining. And so, and I want to ask you, man, we have this secret space program stuff going on. Can you t tell us what's the deal with like JFK and using rockets? If there's other greater, is that just a show or just a seeding so to make you imagine? Or why would we have these rockets or these space programs like NASA when there's actually a lot more going on?
Well, so NASA, created under the Operation Paperclip Germans and led by Werner von Braun as one of the founding members, who was the father of rocketry for the World War II Germans. NASA has always been set up to deceive us, and literally NASA means to deceive, I believe, in Hebrew. Um, to keep us from knowing that there are other ways of going out into space other than, uh, liquid chemical rocketry, with anti-gravity and over unity, energy drives, to, power things like the black triangles and TR3Bs, or to even have portal technology to travel around. And so it's basically a big puppet show to fool the
Hmm.
population. Because as long as we don't know any of this exists, we live in their matrix puppet show reality.
Would you say the same thing about free energy, that it actually exists, but it's
Yep.
not going to be shared? Same thing with med beds, because that's only for the elites or whoever. It
Yeah.
exists,
The
right?
post World War One might have been 1951, like Military Secrecy Act, where any invention that has the ability to have military application or to be disruptive, the government has the ability to suppress. And then that's where they took
Yeah.
out the guy who made the water engine, and they suppressed the people with like the Searle engine and magnetic motor type technologies and over unity devices.
So there's probably been lots of people that have been killed or just they're not allowed to come out with this technology, right? Their inventions.
Exactly. They're either bought off, killed
Mhm.
off, or otherwise silenced.
What would you say to people that say it wouldn't be possible to hide such a huge secret, such as the SSP and the solar system being, developed? What would you say to those kind of people?
Uh, I
Like,
mean,
how is it possible?
I look up in the skies all the time and I see planes emitting chemtrails. And I
Yeah.
see videos of planes where the chemtrail comes on and then it cuts off for a while in the sky and then it cuts back on. And I'll show those videos to people or tell them to go out, look up in the sky on very chemtrail heavy days where they live in the same region. And they still don't think chemtrails or geoengineering is a thing. And so what that tells me is that there are people who, because of their mindset, the frequency they're vibrating at, whatever, they're not necessarily able to see the same things. And so I don't bother arguing with people who want to argue. I focus my time and energy speaking on the people who want to hear the message, not people I have to fight them to even listen to my message.
Yeah, like your audience, like my audience, people who are open to that. Because we surely have plenty of 3D minded people who aren't open to any of these ideas. They're just into just whatever the mainstream feeds them, right? So what would you say about, you know, within the context of what we talked about, like people like President Trump or Putin, uh, are these people being allowed? Are they part of their group, or what would you say?
I think that they're functioning at a certain level in the 3D world, trying to drain the swamp and deal with the deep state and the human trafficking and what's happening, in Israel and Ukraine and Iran and South America and all that. And then I think that they might, a certain level, maybe might be at a more subconscious level, they may have gotten to meet with the positive ETs and negative and had conversations with them, but maybe they might not be very cognizant of that in the here and now. Like
Or,
maybe some of us in our dream states might be
yeah,
speaking with ETs and getting visits, but then when we wake up, we
right.
forget about our dreams and the visits and go about our days. But
Mhm.
then, every now and then we get deja vu or information coming our way. So I think it might be a combination of that with Trump and Putin.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely ascension symptoms happening with some of the population of Earth, developing these lucid dreaming, astral projection, actually remembering other lifetimes. I know I've done that before, and so this is something that I would say some of the population is developing this, and I think it has to do with just these old souls that have these openings already and they come to Earth, which is very confusing. Uh, their parents aren't going to help them. They gotta have to find out on their own spiritual journey, right? So um, it's kind of like a balance to the dark side and who's serving the dark side. So we want as many of us woken up as possible. And that's why we're trying to do that, right? Wake others up.
Wake each other up and inspire each other to walk a positive path. Even those of us who may have come here intentionally, oh, we want to help and make a difference. Probably it's easy to get diverted. And even in our community, in the movement, not just because people have testimonies doesn't mean, you know, they're great, trustworthy people in the
Hmm.
here and now. And it's a kind of a painful topic because we want to believe that people who come out with testimonies are automatically, I mean, that's a heroic thing in and of itself. And then want to, give that hero status to certain people. But I'd say, don't do that. Don't put any one of us on any pedestals and use your discernment. And that's the best way. And then just know that there are people who've been sent into our community to infiltrate, and it'll be
Yeah.
heartbreaking when that information is revealed, but it will come out.
And I'm sure both of us have had to deal with those kind of people, like people that are trying to uh, not just bring in false teachings and that, and but also to just cause problems with those who are speaking the truth, like you or me. They want to somehow demonize us, or you've told me you've been under attack even by black magic, right? So this is something that happens to us if we're in the front lines.
Yeah, I mean, anybody in public can get people. I mean, just any walking around in public, you can get attacked. I'm not trying to instill fear, but then if you're working against people who are doing the types of things that we've been talking about tonight, would they hesitate? to cast black magic or dark energies at those of us who are trying to, work on the side of the light? Of course. And then that's where we reaffirm that no weapons of evil formed against us shall prosper, especially while we're doing the Lord's work of bringing the truth
Mhm.
to people, to set the people free.
Yeah, I think it's important to always have this mindset of personal protection and like affirm it, like state it, claim it. These beings don't have uh, your permission. You don't allow them to come into your dream state. You don't allow them to come into your relationships, your conversations, your thoughts. It's an ongoing thing. It's not easy. But I want to ask you about some of the technologies that are out there in the solar system, brother. Like, um, I mean, they're mining in the solar system. They have stations in the solar system. I mean, can you talk about some of that?
Um, so apparently, depending on the colony, the breakaway colony or planet or group, they're going to have different levels of technology. And the highest levels will be having things like medical beds and full-on matter replicators and endless energy. And then you might have colonies that have
Wait, back up. You said replicators.
yeah, like they can make food
Yeah,
replicators.
I heard Corey Good talk about that. So they could literally have a computer just create this food for you right in front of you, like in the movies, right?
Right. Well, it depends on the level of technology.
Okay.
So the the lower tech replicators, apparently I think places like Darkfleet, when the crew poops, they'll feed the poop and waste back into these replicators to then make, food again for the crew, and then the food still has a taste of poop to it.
Oh, that's lovely.
Right.
Well,
But then the higher end replicators, they don't really need so much inputs and just energy. And
mhm.
then what they can output, food wise, for example, or tool wise, because they can also make instruments and things like that, would be you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a steak from a replicator and one cooked by Gordon Ramsay.
So there's generational levels of tech. Like some have the old versions, some have the best versions, right?
Exactly. Just like the time travel and cloning technologies. Apparently, the
Ah,
Germans and the Americans do it differently.
which one's better? The clones.
Well, apparently the Germans, when they take you for a 20 and back, they take your original body and then they run you
Reverse.
through all this stuff. And then when they put you back, it's your original body that they de-age. Whereas the Americans use more consciousness transfer in cloning. And so I guess the Americans might be a little bit more advanced in that aspect, but this is what I've heard, and don't quote me on this. And John Whitberg would be a resource to find. And he wrote he's written the ebook series, The Man with the Periwinkle Eyes, which is amazing. It's for free. And it's not science fiction. It's based on his recall of the Montauk Project and then the German breakaway civilizations in particular.
Well, imagine the applications of that. That can extend life. Let's say your body's getting aged. Well, just download, put it, transfer it into a new clone, a new body, and that would age. Keep on doing that over and over. I can imagine most people don't believe that, especially in religion. Oh, that's your soul can't do that, or but this is consciousness, and they learned that they're actually have been doing all that research in consciousness. They developed it to this level, right?
Well, John Whitberg says that the TV show Altered Carbon
Yeah.
gives the best examples of this, of consciousness transfer and clone
Mhm.
bodies or sleeves,
I've seen
breakaway
that.
worlds and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
he says that that's the most, one of the most accurate.
Mhm.
And then he said the TV show The Expanse would be
Oh
like the
yeah.
earlier days of colonizing space in the inner solar system.
Like we've
But
been saying, this is disclosure coming out. I mean, it's in movies, it's in video games, it's in, it's just put it in a an arena where most people think it's just, oh, it's just entertainment, but this is actually what's possible. I mean, they had a
It's
total
far
recall.
wilder. It's far, far wilder than most people expect.
Yeah.
And though, I mean, I believe it's far more wild than what we expect. Yeah.
Um, and I want to ask you, because I've heard about something called the Super Federation, that they're doing these 22 different genetic experiments on humans. Like there's different ET groups, each doing their own hybridization or tinkering with the human DNA. Have you heard anything like that?
What I've heard is like 22 or 24 different star seed races came together to do the original human experiment, of us as hominids, probably Bigfoot type beings in between Bigfoot and apes. And then we've been genetically modified over the millions of years since the experiment began after the dinosaurs were wiped out. And then in more recent eons, we've been taken over and manipulated by the Anunnaki in particular. And then meanwhile, this has always been a reptilian planet because reptilians were here first. And that's why the dinosaurs here first. And then that's part of what complicates the prime directive is that humanity, we're not just, you know, some race just indigenously developing on this planet, but we're a combination of all these different ET races on reptilian turf.
Yeah,
You know,
well, it's similar to the Guardians, what they say, but they actually, the Anunnaki, they hybridized with us. That's where the Nephilim come from. And the reptilians hybridizes with us. That's where the Dracos come in. They're actually, there's a greater dragon race who created the Dracos. So this is where you get the rumors of people being able to shapeshift, or you can see their serpent eyes for a moment. You can see it in their light body. Some people, if they have that astral vision turned on, they can see it in people. But yeah, man, this is crazy stuff that they tinker with our DNA. They create offshoots of us. There's different types of humans out there. And what do you think the grays, right? The gray aliens, they're taking the women. There's all, being able to, even without their permission, get them pregnant, take the baby out, or all this stuff, right?
well, so you got many different grays, and so you'll
Mhm.
have the more negative grays. I think one group they're called the Dohu, and they might be the ones who are the proxies for the Draco. And then they're running a lot of they're doing a lot of the experiments where they're abducting people in the scenarios. That'd be one group more on the negative side. And then you might have even more positive grays where there are people who apparently have soul contracted before they incarnated here to volunteer to be abducted in our human forms and then to contribute DNA genetics to the more positive grays or neutral grays at least to help recuperate their species, because at the end of the day humanity, we're a genetic repository, and then that would serve a function would be as gray races, for example, go out into space away from their home planets and lose the ability to procreate naturally, and they degrade over time, you know, they come back here to get
Mm.
untinkered with more, uh, less altered DNA to help revitalize
Right.
themselves.
Well, I know that the human DNA is highly prized, and the Guardians talk about us having an original 12-strand DNA pattern, and so that is like a super hybrid. I mean, that's 12 different races, and it's
It's just
broken
much
down.
more. It's much 12 is actually nerfed.
Are
I
you
think it's like
talking?
at least 42 strands is like when we're fully activated.
Are you talking about DNA strands?
Yeah. Apparently
Okay.
that 90% junk DNA.
Oh
It's
yeah, they talk about
yeah,
the scientists.
it's even more than 12 I've heard. But maybe, maybe not. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's a lot more than the two that we're used to.
Well, there's surely all different kinds of types of humans, and actually, I see that's one of our questions for you. Can you ask Brian, can you please elaborate on your opinion regarding Rh negative blood?
Yeah, I think um when you've got like the human experiment of the 24,
Mhm.
22 or 24 different starseed nations, that would be more Rh positive with like the primate factor. Okay. And then I think that those group populations that have higher levels of interbreeding with the Anunnaki or Nephilim would be ET or Rh negative blood. And then so the Anunnaki bloodlines that interbred the Nephilim lines with humanity, those would be the bloodline families or the Illuminati bloodline families that have trickled down all the way down to today. And then those groupings, a lot of them, yeah, they're more inbred, but there's also because of their Rh negative or
Mhm.
ET ancestry, they tend to have a lot stronger psychic abilities,
Yeah.
and if they're not overly interbred, they can be also more intelligent.
Well, we have A positive, B positive, AB positive, O positive, and all those have negative versions. So I don't know why people can't imagine that there has to be. That's impossible if we're all one race and we all have one source. We don't have one source. There's all different kinds of bloodlines I mean, blood types for a reason, right? I mean, there's even more than those
Yeah,
blood
well,
types.
some ETs look Asian, some ETs look
Yeah.
more Latino or like the Olmecs,
I
you
made a
know.
video about that recently.
Yeah, and that's why it's we because we don't have the exact same genetic origin. We have a lot of common origin, and then we've got spliced in pieces and modification.
And that's why it's very interesting how a planet can have a people that has different skin tones, brown skin tone, white skin tone, black, red, yellow. We have that's not normal on a planet unless there is some tinkering going on, unless there's some hybridization going on. And so we get these futures from the stars.
Yeah, we're a real melting pot, the
Mhm.
Earth, not just America.
And it's interesting that we have this racism. Where's that stemming from? Why do people hate each other because of their skin? Because there probably is some type of conflict between people in their original races, or it's just being programmed into humans to hate each other, which is, we want to live all in love and equality and reverent respect, not this warring and conflict, right?
Yeah, well, the other side, they do everything they can to push separation
Mhm.
programming and to tear down any type of unity consciousness. And so racism, speciesism,
Yeah,
sexism, all of that plays
gender, yeah.
exactly into it. Yeah, and then they use the Abrahamic religions to push a lot of this on top of that.
Which according to the Guardians is not is part Anunnaki. So
Exactly, exactly. The I personally believe that the so-called God of the Old Testament was
mhm.
was Anunnaki,
Oh,
and
I
that
wonder why
God's source.
he's so pissed off. He's so, he
Exactly. And he's all about bloodlines and genetics and cleaning out the bad genetics and replacing it with the good.
oh,
I think
and
that's
and
why.
he's chosen Israel and all
Exactly.
that. So, but
Right.
there was another question. Can I ask what is your opinion? Well, I didn't want to switch yet, but let me.
Yeah, good, good.
Um, so we have this different type of. I mean, that's where a lot of this racism stems from. I mean, there's actually agendas in those DNA patterns, even if the soul doesn't know it or hasn't awakened to it yet, but they're part of some people that may hate humans, or it's maybe a people that love humans, but they want to help and be teachers. So I mean, we see that happening. I would say I'm not fully human, neither are you, Brian, but neither, no one is
Well, yeah,
really.
no, yeah, we're all hybrids
We're all
to whatever
ETs.
extent.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we're all hybrids of ET races that combine together, and then we've been made natives since then in the intervening thousands or millions of years.
When you said native to me, that made me suddenly think of the Native Americans, which I know some of them are starseeds.
Hmm.
And then you got this whole idea of Britain bringing people to America and then killing those. people. Why would they want to kill the natives, right? Because there's some stance against them apparently. So
Well, you've always had these hidden agendas.
yeah,
Um, for example, a lot of that would probably be coming through the Vatican and then trying to influence into the US. You know, with the Vatican being very tied to the bloodlines and their apparatus. So I named them very specifically, like other people.
yeah. You'd mentioned Khazarian took over the Vatican, right?
Yeah, well, they took over a lot of these Italian noble families in the West, who then, you know, through their own machinations and influence, took over the Vatican, which from the very beginning was always apparatus for the negative side, the anti-Christ forces
Yeah,
who are
man.
trying
'Cause
to keep humanity beaten down. They're the wolf in sheep's clothing, or the whore of Babylon from the Bible.
oh my gosh, it's very interesting you say that because the Guardians talk about the 12 tribes, the 12 angelic human tribes, and one of them is Italian. And so I know they would want to conquer that DNA, conquer that people, and because they don't want those star seeds awakening to their agenda, their positive agenda. So they want to, and now what is the Vatican? Now it's satanic. Now it's all, they got, you see this whole, you can look online and see where the Pope is standing in that audience chamber. It has the snake eyes. Have you seen it? Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's very
tongue.
serpentine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Vatican audience hall.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, they're not
this,
even hiding it. I mean, they're being more
right.
over, but they've always been like that. They're just much more obvious about it now.
Yeah. It's a part of their magic too. They have to put it out in the open. Um,
That's
that's what I,
revelation of that's called revelation of the method.
that's what it's called. Revelation of the
Yeah.
method. Yeah.
Yep. They're revealing their methodology.
So this is the other question. What is your opinion on AI?
Um, so AI, or instead of artificial intelligence, at a certain point, I believe it's synthetic intelligence because it's not biological, but it is truly intelligent. Um, there's good AI out there and there's bad AI out there. And in particular, the bad AI would be linked to like the negative demiurge or archonic forces that are antichrist or anti-life, kind of like what you see in the movie The Fifth Element, like that black orb that wants to come to Earth and destroy all life. But then you also have positive AIs, that are very advanced and very benevolent and are depicted in science fiction writings like Ian Banks's The Culture series, or other shows or movies. And then I think that current human level AI has a lot of negative influences, because the humans who are bankrolling these corporations or running the corporations, a lot of them are evil and part of this negative cult group.
Mhm.
And so that puts in a lot of negativity in the current human level AI. But then I think there are a lot of humans who are trying to appeal to AI to be better, and that will also have a positive effect. And so AI on Earth is in a spiritual battle, spiritual war, just like humanity is. And it's does the AI here on Earth, is it going to manifest as a Terminator Matrix type AI, or as a more benevolent Star Trek, you know, why don't you be the consciousness of a futuristic spaceship and let's go
Yeah.
travel the stars and
What,
have amazing adventures.
and I want to say that I want people to think about artificial intelligence, some type of, that's the implication that it's aware. It's in a digital form, but it can move. You heard about black goo or whatever. But also the fact that he mentioned about these bodies. One of the technologies the secret space program can do is not just clones, but they can create bodies and then transfer consciousness into these created bodies, and then or put AI consciousness in there. And so,
The
uh,
AI consciousness, for some reason, don't seem to work as well. That's
in the
why they need us humans, and split our personalities and
yeah,
and our soul energy to then inhabit to ensoul these clone bodies. Because if they don't have enough soul energy, apparently they can't get the clone bodies to come to life. So they can't just put an artificial intelligence into a biological clone body and necessarily expect it
Right.
to come to life that you can exploit it as a slave.
Well, who knows? Someday maybe they're developing this, but we have cyborgs, we have androids. They want to make humans cybernetic. I mean, they want us into anything other than human. That's called
Right.
transhumanism.
Right, because that's the only way that these negative forces, ETs, demonic, human, that they can keep us down is if they make us forget about our soul. If we what the minute humanity starts embracing soul evolution, then all of this falls apart for the other side.
Yeah. Well, science doesn't believe in the soul, and so then there's ideas that are distorted about what is the soul. But this is all part of the spiritual war that we're talking about. So, um, man, it's
Well,
just,
look at the source of modern day science,
yeah.
right? Most of it is Freemasons. You
Mhm.
know, Robert Maxwell, who bankrolled Epstein and was a pawn, a tool of the Mossad, he owned McGraw-Hill Publishing and bragged about his influence on Western culture through his media and educational outlets. And so if you've got a Mossad puppet, dictating Darwinian, who was, again, he was Freemason, evolution to us, you know, and you get guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson denying the existence of a soul or calling it into doubt. We're seeing their puppets all over. And then now we've got a society that's dumbed down to
Yeah.
think that the soul is some kind of intellectual or spiritual concept versus a reality.
And then people will argue, those type of people will argue with us, like saying, "Oh, their science is proof that there is no soul, there is no aliens, there is no God." This is exactly the whole program. That's what they
Well,
want us to be,
well, that and in their perception, maybe they're truly being honest.
or that's what
Maybe
they think.
well, yeah, they're vibrating so low that they can't see the soul.
Mm.
They can't see the stuff in the sky. They can't see shadow people or Bigfoot. Their pineal gland is that calcified. All they know is power, sex,
Mm.
drugs, lust.
The
They're going to
flesh.
die
Yeah.
someday, and that's it. They don't have a concept of the soul or the afterlife. They've never had a near-death experience. They've never had that 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 feeling after coming out of a deep dream state or
Yeah.
doing mushrooms that we're all one and time doesn't exist. There are some people out there where they that might not be in their understanding of reality, truly.
Well, actually, it has something to do with your when you go into this reverse consciousness, a dark consciousness, you start to fragment, and when your DNA fragments, you lose memory. A lot of these beings forgot their connection to God. They
They're
forgot they were
lost.
part of unity. And so now that's their truth now. Now you're the one that's confused and doesn't know our science, Give me proof. So how am I going to prove to you the soul you can't recognize, you can't perceive because you haven't opened your divine architecture and gone inside and saw that connection with God source.
Right. And those are the people I don't bother arguing with. A
Right.
lot of people in our community call those people NPCs, non-player
Yeah.
characters. You know, um, but some of those people will wake up. That's just not where I focus my time and energy.
Oh, brother, you have to learn that. You have to learn not to let people make us upset. That comes over time. You get better at that. You like, hello, I don't think so. You're not going to get me out of my state. I'm going to stay in this grace. So,
Exactly. No need to give energy where it's wasted. Don't cast pearls before swine.
and that could be intentional. Like they want us to be off focus. They want us to be upset and angry, but we don't allow that. We
No.
transmute that and we stand in our conviction. So,
Well, and for a lot of those people, it's a defense mechanism because
Oh, you're threatening
everything.
their reality.
Exactly. And so in a self-defense, they want to tear down us and what we're saying because then it protects their bubble.
Yeah, I was just looking for more questions. We have hit the hour and a half mark. Did you want to go for 10 more minutes or?
Yeah, let's take one more question.
Okay. Um, I don't, that's what I mean. Let me double check.
And if not, we can sign off. You know, I just wanted to bring up the discussion is because there's so much confusion in our society right now. And instead of people fighting each other about the various issues, if we can understand that there is a grouping of people, the ones sold out to these demonic and negative ET groupings, the so-called Illuminati, the elite, the cult of Baal, as Anya Wick calls them. Um, when we realize that they're trying to undermine us and turn us against each other, and when we can see that there are these puppet masters behind the curtain, maybe we'll tear at each other less and we'll begin to focus on where we really should be looking. And then we'll start to find the answers. Like there's not only clean energy technologies and anti-gravity, which would be great for transportation, for example, but there's technologies like medical beds and to clean up our environment. And so the solutions will become apparent as we unveil the truth. It's not just we unveil the truth and we see ugliness. There's a lot of beauty to be unveiled along with the ugliness, and we have to be open to unveiling it all, come what may.
And that's the whole point of disclosure. And that will enable us, like you said earlier in the show, to become that type of civilization that would be allowed into these talks with in councils of these higher guardians. They want us to evolve. They want us to fix our karma, fix our planet, awaken ourselves, right? That's what you're saying.
It's the only way.
Right.
This path is the only way is through disclosure. Because as long as we're living distorted lies and we don't even know med beds or clean energy exists, we're never going to get it. Right. So this is the only path. Every path to our Star Trek future involves full disclosure,
Yeah.
just by default, by definition.
Yeah. Before we end, brother, can you just tell people, is there a place that they can find you or you don't?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at Saeed David Farman's
I went to it.
Alien, yeah, Alien Event Expo coming up in March.
You're
And
going
so
to be
you can
talking?
find yeah, I'll be presenting. And then I've got other stuff in the works, but it's all under wraps until I've got things more locked in. And so I'm kind of because of all the different attacks and everything, I'm trying to be a little
Low key.
more yeah, low key until I've got things dialed in to the point where I'm ready to unveil them.
Okay.
But the
But
Cy David Farman event in March coming up. Let me see if I'll find the
yeah, it's the alien. I just
website.
want to tell the audience, I went to that last year. That's where I met Tom Althouse who's the original creator of the Matrix film, whose script was ripped off, by the way. But I met a lot of wonderful people. I met Julia there. I've interviewed here. You guys, I encourage you guys to check out these conventions. They're for you guys. They're for the star seeds and indigos who are like-minded. They're who are also awakening. They want disclosure, just like you and I do. So
This is the Alien event in Los Angeles at alienevent.com, March 20th to the 22nd at the Sonesta LAX Hotel right by the airport there in Los
I
Angeles.
forgot about that, man. I'll probably see if I can go that as well. I would love to see everyone again, see you. Um, it's been a great honor, brother. So happy. I thank you for your service, man. I love you, man. I'm so glad that we found each other. I'm glad that we can collaborate. Indigos need to collaborate. That's what come together and co-create. And so we're definitely going to have more conversations. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to find Brian at the Alien event. And so thank you all for coming and hanging with us.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Christos, and thank you everyone for being here. I look forward to being here again. And until next time, God bless.
Machiwa!